Well, welcome everybody to our session today, Sales Process Design, Igniting Your Sales Team Effectiveness. My name is Sarah and I'm on the content team here at Qwilr, and we're delighted that you are joining us today. For those of you who come to our webinars, you probably know that this is part of our Qwilr Sales Master Series. And if you are not familiar with Qwilr, we are web-based proposal software, and we help your team improve productivity and win rates with visually impressive and interactive web-based proposals that help you stand out and prompt buyers to take action. You can learn more at Qwilr.com. And just as a side note, you are viewing a Qwilr page right now. So this deck was created in Qwilr. Now let's go ahead and meet our speaker. So I'm excited to welcome John Grispon from Winning by Design to our session today. John is a revenue architect, providing revenue consulting and process redesign for recurring revenue organizations. He has been a part of 2 successful exits as a co-founder of a digital health startup that was acquired in 2016, and as a sales leader of a fintech company that went through an IPO. Over his 20 plus years in software, he sold, coached, and led teams to rapid growth in B2B tech startups. John has helped grow startup revenues past 35 million and has managed larger functions at big tech firms with global reach. During his 12-year career at Microsoft, he led the $150 million banking industry vertical across 14 countries to 44% growth. John has a BSBA from Northwest Missouri State, and he is a mentor with Stadia Ventures, R3 Ventures, and a Founder Institute. Welcome, John. We're excited to learn from you today.
The unmute button. Thank you very much for having me. Thanks, Sarah.
Great.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Some people might not be familiar with Winning by Design. So would you please take a moment and share a little bit about your current organization?
Absolutely. So Winning by Design, we are a global organization. We are a B2B revenue consulting and training company. As my bio sort of stated, we enable recurring revenue teams to build sustainable growth. And we use our skills as operators. A bunch of our employees are former operators of high growth companies. And we apply scientific frameworks and proven models to sales, marketing, customer success teams inside of those B2B companies. And we also do it for global enterprises to help them achieve impact. We were founded back in 2012. We're a fully remote company. We serve organizations like, the big ones like examples are Uber Eats, DocuSign, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, Adobe are some of the large ones. We have over 600 customers today. We're a large and growing team. And if you want to learn more about us, go see what our customers have to say about us at G2 Crowd.
Love that. Thank you, John. Very, very impressive. And I know that you have a great session planned for today. And we want to get right into it because that's why everybody came, right? But first, I want to kind of start off by getting to know all of you in our audience. And so I'm just going to ask you to share a little bit about yourself. Please tell us, are you a sales leader? Are you a founder or company executive? Are you in sales? Are you in marketing or RevOps? And then who do you sell to? So are you selling to the smaller side, the SMBs, the mid-market enterprise, or perhaps your B2C? So just take a moment, let us know a little bit about you. It's helpful for John as he goes through the session as well, so he can kind of tailor his remarks based on who's on the call today. So please just take a moment. This poll doesn't go anywhere but this webinar, so please share with us where you're coming from. Good. All right. A few more of you need to just type in your responses here, and then we'll close it out. Good. So closing it out in 3, 2, 1. And let's see how this came out. Oh, got a few more coming in. Great. Okay, so here are the results. So John, it looks like we have about 45% sales leaders 18% are company executives or founders, a few people in sales, so about 9%, and 27% in marketing or rev off. So nice representation there. As for who they're selling to, 36% in SMBs, 55% in mid-market, 30%, 36% enterprise organizations, and 18% selling to consumers. So very, very interesting. John, any feedback that you want to give on that?
Oh, this is a good audience. This is the kind of audience we sort of expected and planned for. Sales leader, potentially rev ops, and a smattering of a founder. So this is good.
Great. All right. So with that, I'm going to close our poll now, and I'm just going to let you get right into this, John. So please take it away.
I will. Thank you. We've got about 45 minutes or so of talk time, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. So thank you, everyone. You may not believe this, but sales process will make or break how fast you grow. It is a simple thing, and hopefully we demonstrate that today, but it's not easy. And so let's take a look at this first slide. Let's start by talking about a fairly straightforward sales process. Different sales teams may use different words to describe the steps in their process, but this generic process covers the vast majority of sales processes that are out there, and this is a flow chart. So notice how this process is quite customer friendly. In the activities as described from the point of view of the customer, not from the perspective of the seller trying to hit quota. In this sales process, you see 3 different areas. You see prospecting in red with 3 sources of opportunities: outbound, inbound, and targeted for those larger accounts. You see sales process in blue, and there are some classic steps of your conversation with a customer that are listed there. Some will be more, some will be less. And then the beginning of the customer success process in green. You can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Now, not every go-to-market model needs the exact same sales process. In fact, there should probably be slight differences between them depending on the segment, the type of customer, where you're at in your stage. You can see from this chart, right, how sales activities across the sales processes can vary depending on which type of target you're going after. No matter what stage your company's in, you must have a clearly defined sales process and a playbook. Success in SaaS sales requires measurement, and measurement requires that you be methodical. So creating your documented sales process allows you to first provide consistent guidance to your sellers on how to progress through the deals. Second, conform your activities to a process that you can easily measure. And then third, understand what's working and what needs adjusting. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So, really straightforward. What are the steps? Really simple. Again, I said simple, but not easy. Step 1, determine which sales process you want to utilize. Determine the sales process that's best suited for your business and make modifications as needed. We could create that from scratch. You could take it from someone else that's in industry, from someone that came from a different organization. You need to start somewhere. And then second, map out those stages. Map out the stages of your sales playbook point by point. And we'll get into what that entails. And then third, define those stages. For each stage, you should define the following. So why don't you scroll down a little bit, Sarah? So this is an example sales process where you have a stage 0 is handoff, stage 1 is diagnosing, stage 2 is prescribing. And if you want to just open any one of those, to look at the details behind it. Now, there's some great visuals that is being provided by Qwilr here, but the idea here is inside of each of those stages, you want some very basic elements. The goal of that stage, the description of what needs to happen at that stage. Second, the in-stage actions. And these are a few simple actions per stage that the seller should take in order to get clear insight into the customer situation and what's happening there. Third is any enablement. You don't see that here, but there's any enablement tools that would be made available to assist the seller, whether that be a sales deck or a white paper, any of those types of content or enablement. And then lastly is the exit criteria. This is the outcome that you desire. And this needs to be completed before they are able to proceed to the next stage. Okay. So that's an example. Go ahead and scroll all the way down to the next slide. So we won't go through each of those, but we'll start here. We'll start on the low end. When you're an early stage startup, we'll call it phase 1. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, you've got, this startup phase is anywhere between 2 and 10 million in annual recurring revenue. In this phase, it is unlikely, it's possible, but it's unlikely that you have a CRM and you may be storing sales activities even in a spreadsheet, and that's fine. What you're seeing on screen is a simple solutions sales process to use as a baseline while in this startup phase. So let's address a couple of questions and some common pitfalls. Question number 1, when should I start creating my first process and playbook? Good
question. I don't know.
Yeah, it is a good question. And feel free to give us some input in the chat here. Ideally, and it's been our experience that you want to start to create your first one roughly after the first 10 deals that you have. But that's just the beginning. You want to update that after 20, after 30. You're going to start to understand what's working, what's not working, and do that every 10 up to about 50. Then it should be stable. After you get sort of 50 deals under your belt, it should be pretty stable until you get to about 100 deals.
Let me ask you, John, how does it change, as you're growing from deals? What are some typical adjustments that you make?
Well, the early sales that occur, oftentimes they are not perfect customer fits. So while you may have gone through a process with these early customers, you may learn after 10 or 15 sales that those first 2 customers that you're basing your process on aren't ideal customers. And so you want to modify it to address the customers that are more appropriate to your product and service.
So who you want to be targeting?
Sorry, say again.
So who you want to be targeting versus
Yes.
who you're currently getting. Okay, good. And we've got Lisa chatting and saying she's currently in this stage. So the rest of you, let us know what stage you're in. Are you in the startup stage? And what questions do you have that we could throw John's way?
As we get the questions that come in, I'm going to go to question 2. How many stages should I have in my sales process? And our recommendation is don't do any more than 10. Remember that you don't want to over-engineer a process. That's really the enemy of a sales rep's time, of a seller's time. You have to be aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the dangers is really consuming too much of the salesperson's time. So they're spending more time on admin or process work versus actually selling.
Right. Another one, should you start from scratch? And I am a proponent of leveraging where others have learned. You could for the first 10 deals, but why? We provide a couple of templates, and I'm going to share with you a little bit more about that for you to work from. But there's plenty that's been created out there, and so learn from the hundreds that have done this before you. It's okay to borrow. It's okay. That is completely fine. Let's talk about pitfalls. Pitfall 1, no process. which is the antithesis, right? So when you're in founder sales mode, as one of our listeners mentioned, it's typical to keep winging it. Every deal closes a bit differently. To you, it's pretty clear, but to others, not so much. It's a mystery. So how do you establish your first process? So one idea is to do a search across your email and your calendar to identify an account. And that'll provide a history of how that relationship was started and how many meetings you had. See if you can glean some themes or some common language across those deals to put together your first process. Another pitfall is a self-centered process. So if you look at you're looking at your sales process and it feels salesy, right? You've got terms like qualify, demo, negotiate. It might seem that it's just semantics, but reps absorb, new sellers absorbing guidance like this will add up to a company that wants something but gives very little. And ultimately, that might create unhappy customers. The best way to solve this is to look at the key actions in each phase and ensure they provide real value to the customer. For example, instead of using the term qualify, say diagnose, and then teach your team how to diagnose the customer's pain by asking the right kind of diagnostic questions, just like a good physician would. Right?
I like that, diagnose. Very good. Nice change.
And then the third pitfall, an overly detailed process. Overthinking will kill deals. You don't need to identify every single step and criteria. That will translate into many fields to be completed inside your CRM. And before you know it, your sales reps have basically turned into admin people who are spending very little time with customers. So that's pitfall 3. And that is phase 1, startup. Let's go to phase 2. Phase 2 is scale up. This could be that you're growing from 10 million all the way up to 100 million, 10 to 20 million in that range, up to 100 million. In this phase, you're growing. In fact, you're outgrowing the spreadsheet, and you need to implement your first CRM before things get out of control. Your CRM at this stage can be something like HubSpot or Pipedrive, right? You may not be willing to commit to something like Salesforce quite yet, which is fine, because it requires a significant amount of time and resources, and usually a consultant of some sort to set it up. So what you're looking at on screen here, this is a sales process to focus on outbound and becoming more customer centric. See that we add more green, so there's more customer success added there. And a common question here is, should I just get Salesforce already? And our response would be, no, use a simple CRM to start. We recommend holding off at this stage. Right now, where you're at, your process isn't 100% solid. You don't have it nailed yet because there's still more to learn. And as you build up your sales team, you're going to learn different things. You need to be flexible. Simple tools that are easy to manage at this stage. Learn from everybody before you. For every change that you need to make inside of Salesforce, it's a wonderful product, but you will often need to make many others. Talk to anyone in sales ops, probably on the line here as well, that has implemented Salesforce at their company, and they're going to let you know that it gets real involved really fast. The next question, should I hold my team accountable for executing the process? And the answer is yes, as much as possible, but as little as needed. You need to be flexible to change. So listen to what they're telling you, what's working, what's not, but also review and update the process every quarter just to make sure it's still meeting your needs, right? Use call recordings, use demos to streamline the process as much as possible. And then there's some common pitfalls, and these you want to definitely pay attention to. Pitfall 1, you're not analyzing your deals against the process. Maybe you continue to win deals, but you're not going back to learn why the customer bought your solution, how you can continue to replicate that, and how you can improve their experience. You need to make sure that you're doing that. Second pitfall, you are hiring a sales rep and think they should be able to do it. This is a big mistake I see a lot. Your first salesperson will have experience in sales for sure, but likely doesn't have much experience at building a sales process from scratch, especially if they came from a very large tech organization that maybe has where they've sold SaaS software before. But do sit down together for a few hours and build that sales process. If you're the sales leader or if you're the founder, build that sales process with your seller and do it in a Google Sheet or a doc or a slide. Your knowledge of your customer plus your rep's knowledge of efficient selling will contribute to a better process for sure. The third pitfall, you're selling to several different types of customers. At this stage, it's important to really focus on the types of customers that you want to serve. For example, if you're still selling to everything from individuals to global corporations, then you are quickly going to see that your resources are going to be spread far too thin. You're going to run the risk of doing a mediocre job serving too many segments rather than an excellent job knowing and serving a more focused customer segment. Be sure that you've become purposeful and consistent in sort of determining your target users that you want to serve. That's a tough one, but necessary to consider as you're building a selling process. Pitfall 4, you are closing deals, but not providing any support post-sale. Customer success post-sale is just as important, if not more so, than the sale itself. In SaaS sales, anywhere from 80 to 95% of all revenues, total lifetime value, comes after the initial sale. So customer success will own the bulk of the revenue. If you don't yet have any dedicated success team members, make sure you work out a plan with your product and engineering team for how to address customer issues as they come up. And then pitfall 5, you're using the wrong process. In general, when a prospect reaches out to us on our website, we respond with a series of actions. I don't know how many times you've done this, right? These include you call them, you leave them a voicemail, you send them an email. We know that time is of the essence, and many companies aim to do these actions within minutes, right? SLA, 5 minutes. But what we found is that this time-sensitive approach is often used in the wrong situation. To clarify, let's just say, for example, a prospect downloads a detailed research paper on your website by providing their email address in a form. This lead is often wrongly categorized as an inbound marketing qualified lead, but the sales development rep or the seller calls the person immediately, leaves a voicemail, sends a follow-up email as if the prospect had already expressed a pain, but they never did, right? The prospect feels intimidated by the assertive follow-up. So clearly not every inbound lead and marketing qualified lead is created equal. This MQL, this marketing qualified lead, should have gone into the outbound process where research could have been done to determine if the prospect has a pain at all. So that's what we mean by you're using the wrong process. That is scale up, phase 2. Phase 3, grown up. This is when you start to get a lot bigger. And in this phase, you definitely need to get your process and CRM secured. The process adds, if you're looking at this screen now, this drawing, the process adds targeted account outreach, which is often associated with provocative selling. And provocative selling is your, in essence, shining a light on an area. You're sharing with the customer that they do indeed have a problem. You know, because you're an expert, and you're revealing this to them. And so it's a little like the challenger sales method. That's what we use the term provocative. And in this phase, the sales process now extends to customer success for a full customer-centric relationship with each account that you're selling to. So you're selling to the big boys here. This is the time to invest in doing it right. As you're now building your platform, you're going to use it to scale. Your metrics need to be locked and dashboards ironed out. We're not going to cover those here, but there are places you can go to learn all about dashboards and metrics. You may also realize that you're now addressing new segments, such as selling to mid-market from before, where you were only selling to SMB. Each of these new markets needs to go through the same development of your sales process. So win your first 10 deals, right? Then establish a process, then update your process within the next 10 deals, and then the next 10 deals, up to 50 deals, and so on, just like we did with the original. So common questions here. Should I create a different process when I sell into a different segment? If I use only one sales method, consultative selling, to sell to small and medium businesses, and I am moving up market to sell to large corporations, to enterprises, should I change my sales process? And the answer is yes, most likely. Selling to mid-market is a very different sale than it requires, and because it requires more people, right? More are involved to approve a deal. The sales cycle is often longer, and they have a more structured purchasing process. You're going to need to adjust your sales stages, the timing, and the tactics at each step so that you can add value in this new type of process. Next question, should I just get Salesforce here? And our answer is probably. You should also discuss with your peers in your industry or niche market to learn what they've seen and how they've implemented CRM. Another question that you get sort of parallel to that is, what should I spend on a CRM consultant to help us? And the recommendation ballpark, 5 to 15K to set up your CRM and create dashboards for you. They will need to know your process, so make sure you have that playbook ready. There are some pitfalls. One is you keep the same sales process. Don't make this mistake. New segments behave differently from others, and you need to continue being customer-centric by making your sales process fit each segment. Second pitfall is you want to set up your CRM yourself. Yes, of course you're capable, but now's not the time. If you're setting up Salesforce, you should bring in a proven Salesforce consultant who can help you get it right the first time and avoid redoing it and all of the headaches that come along with that later on. And then the final pitfall, you want to use a niche CRM. You've heard about this great niche CRM in your specific niche. And we say, commit to a standardized CRM that provides the best infrastructure. All right. The extra unique customization that you might get from a niche CRM doesn't even come close to the benefit that you get from installing a CRM that's easy to use, that's familiar to your sellers, that has many integrations and has lots of support personnel and RevOps people available because they understand it. So that's the third pitfall of phase 3, grown up. So we're at the end here. What we wanted to provide you was some additional resources. And one of them, this first one here, is from Winning by Design. We made an announcement. That's a very exciting announcement about 30 days ago. And it's just, we're seeing tremendous feedback, positive feedback on it. Normally, this would be something that we would charge for, but we have taken our intellectual property and we're making it public. We're sharing how we build our go-to-market playbooks, and we're calling it a go-to-market playbook development kit. And you are going to be able to access it and download it immediately. We have Sarah is going to be able to send you a link. We can also post the link into the chat if desired. But the idea here is this playbook will help you. It's either in PDF form or in, I believe, Google Slides form. And the idea here is to give you what you saw on screen here are the slides that enable you to build a summary sales process all on one slide. And then the individual stages, the details, right? The goal, what are the end stage actions? What is the exit criteria? Any assets that you want that seller to have? So you can begin to build your playbook. There's some other details about the SaaS sales methodology that Winning by Design promotes and our spiced techniques for communication and for qualification. All of that is available free for download right now. Lots of early stage startups, those in that grown-up stage are grabbing it and utilizing it and doing the work, which is just so exciting to see. So feel free to reach out, and I think we've even posted it in the chat already. So fantastic. So from here, I'm going to pass it back over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, no, thank you, John. This is really a great resource by Winning by Design. So I just want to let everybody know they used to charge for this, and they are offering it to you for free, and you can download it, and then you can modify it for your own use. So this is a great asset, no matter what stage you're in or where you are in your life cycle of your organization. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. It is in the chat, and you will also have an opportunity to check a box at the end of the webinar if you'd rather us email you the link. But few people are already responding positively to this, so just want to make sure that you take advantage of that. We do have a few other resources that may be of interest to you. Qwilr does have a discovery call checklist, a proposal lookbook, which is a very visual asset that gives you ideas for what to include in your proposal and how to make your proposal very effective, as well as our brand new pricing playbook. If you have questions on how do I price my product, or some questions on how do I tap into buyer psychology as I'm pricing my product, that's what's addressed in the pricing playbook. We also have a webinar series coming up in April with Patrick Campbell from Profit Wealth. So those will all be available to you in the exit survey when we close out of this webinar. Just check those boxes, and then I will email you those assets. Okay, we are to the end of our structured presentation now. John, thank you. That was very, very fascinating. And I have a question for you. As we talk about all these different sales process designs, did the pandemic impact any of these designs, or talk to us a little bit about adjustments maybe that people had to make, or maybe there is no adjustment, I don't know, but would you please speak to us a little bit about the impact of the pandemic?
I'm sure everyone will acknowledge the fact that the pandemic impacted some industries more than others, but in some way it impacted everybody because we were not in the office. We were not among colleagues, and which also meant you're not engaging with prospects and customers live. You're doing more and more remote. And so while the sales stages might not change, the actual on the ground activities, how you perform those activities did change. Rather than going on site for meetings, you would be doing them remote, via very similar to what we're doing here via Zoom. And so you then there was a shift to making sure that sellers became very good at remote selling skills, at asynchronous skills,
Mhm.
right? And a simple example would be a stakeholder meeting, making sure when you get everyone together that you have a time nailed on the calendar, that everyone's video is on, that when you're giving a presentation that there's one person giving the presentation, there's another watching the chat, very similar to the way Sarah and I are doing this. Sarah was watching the chat as I was doing the presentation. You need to be able to team these things up. You need to be able to read faces, right? There are oftentimes you don't have the ability to get to know your prospect and understand their persona. You had to do this remotely. All of these things changed during the pandemic, and it created a challenge for sellers who didn't sort of get this. And the faster you picked up remote selling skills, asynchronous skills, the faster you recovered back to normal selling activities, because oftentimes contacts were more available in their homes. And so you could oftentimes get more meetings done. Or if you were going to go through a proposal, you could record a 5 to 10 minute video, send that video out of the proposal, post that to a cloud, and then enable them to make comments, which normally would have taken 3 or 4 weeks. You could have narrowed that down to a week. So you could reduce cycle times, knowing how to engage with asynchronous video, how to utilize remote selling techniques. So not so much a difference in the sales process as it is the actual techniques and skills that are used inside those in-stage actions for each of those stages.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you. If any of our audience has questions for John, please go ahead and chat them in. John, I have another question for you. Who is responsible for developing the sales process? Would that be the founder? Is that the seller? Is it the sales leader? Does it depend on the stage of the organization, or who's ultimately responsible for this?
It varies based on the stage that you're at. In the early stages, it's going to be that founder. The founder, because that founder has been doing founder-led sales, they understand the most about the clients and the process. After that, it depends. Again, as we mentioned earlier, if you hire sellers before you hire a VP of sales, the founder will want to build that process with the seller. Or it could be that you rely on the expertise of a VP of sales that you bring in, or a chief revenue officer that bring in, that can build a process that fits for the stage that you're at and the customers that you're targeting. Later on, it would likely be, as you grow, that it will be the revenue operations team, along with some other supporters and sponsors, but RevOps will typically drive either the development of a sales process or the improvement of a sales process.
Great, great. And you talked about in the sales process of kind of having that feedback loop and making sure your process is appropriate for the customers. And is there a tool that you recommend, or how do you get that feedback? Are you just speaking to customers, or what do you recommend there?
So there's a technique called jobs to be done, where you whether it's your customer success team or whether it's your sellers, go talk to your customers that are already utilizing your product, and have buy them lunch, give them a Starbucks gift card, whatever it is, have an hour conversation with them. Why'd you buy from us? What made us the better choice? Have an understanding of what they were trying to do and how you help them solve the problem. Document that, and that becomes your sales pitch on a going forward basis. That helps you sort of narrow and identify what sort of customer, assuming that you've got the right customer fit, you want to go find more of those customers.
That's great. I love that. I love that. And at Qwilr, we actually do use jobs to be done. So that's great. Okay. And John, we've got a question coming in here. What is the difference between transactional, solution, consultative, and provocative selling?
Sure. So that is the difference in sales approach that you would take based on the motion, the sales motion of your clients. So as an example, if you are a product-led growth company, that's a very transactional way of selling. think of Dropbox, right? Where there's a trial of some sort, and then after the trial, it's maybe an inside salesperson that touches them. Maybe nobody touches them because it's sort of self-service, right? I'm presented pricing on the web page, and I get payment options. Boom, the sale's done. So that's transactional selling. That happens at the lowest end, product-led growth, professional users. When you get to the SMB space, it's more of solution selling, where it takes a little bit longer, days to weeks. But there, you're likely going to do a standard demo. You might provide them a quote and then a PO when they're ready to buy. That's solution selling. You're presenting your solution. You're providing the features and the benefits. As you move up market to say mid market, your selling will change a little bit to be more consultative. You'll present ways to solve a problem. So you'll be focused on understanding their decision process. You'll likely do some form of a custom demo. Make sure that you understand the decision criteria. It's likely that you put together a proposal, and that you'll do some sort of trade or negotiation with them. And then there would be a contract, a full-on agreement that you would send them. And then lastly, for the largest of accounts, enterprise accounts, and typically this is provocative selling is used when you're selling to large accounts, when you have a clear advantage, when you're an innovator in your space. You're in essence, you're identifying the accounts you want. So you're targeting them, you're identifying them, and then rather than go try and solve a problem that they said they have, you're showing them that they have a problem. You're basically shining a light on an area that they may not be familiar with. So it's new information to them, and you will likely provoke them in conversation. You might say something like, based on what we're seeing, if you continue using the current manufacturing process, you'll expend an additional $10 million and you'll lose 3% in market share. That's sort of a provocative statement that gets people thinking that, okay, these guys understand, and there's some impact associated with that. And I want to maybe understand a little bit more about how they could help me solve this problem. They're a little bit ahead of me. And so you might do workshops with them. You might develop a proof of concept or you might have to go through an evaluation with them as you're assisting them through the buying process. And then on top of sending them a contract, you might even build a very specific statement of work. And then once they buy and they execute the agreement, you would onboard them through a customer success organization. So that's the final piece, consultative or provocative selling, rather.
That's great. So in North America, could we say that provocative selling would also be poke the bear selling?
You could, yes, that's a Josh Braun statement, I think, poking the bear.
Yep.
Yeah, the idea is exactly the same, is that you're providing information that perhaps they didn't have. You're looking at it from a different angle. You're adding, you're showing them in essence that the problem is bigger than they thought. So you're adding to the priority, you're increasing the priority, and that will make for more fertile hunting grounds for you.
Great. So John, we're going to put you on the spot here. We've got a question. What would be the ballpark price to bring on a consultant to develop a sales process?
That is, it's tough. It's going to be dependent on the size of your organization. It's going to be dependent on whether it's an independent consultant or whether it's a consultant from a monster organization. That could be, in the tens of thousands of dollars, up into the hundreds of thousands. I've seen it as high as that, sort of depending on how much research needs to be done, how much data needs to be looked at, because a good consultant will not only look at the qualitative data and have conversations with key personnel on the team, but to look at the Salesforce data that you have to make sure that the process is built appropriately for your motion.
Yeah, so I guess the answer is really it depends on so many different variables.
It does.
We do have an option when you close out from this webinar that if you would like more information from Winning by Design, if you would like to hear more about their services, just check that box and we'll make sure that you get that information. Same comment for Qwilr if you want to find out how Qwilr can improve your sales process and improve your win rates. We'll be happy to show you more about our proposal software. So this is your last chance. If you've got a question, please type it in. Otherwise, we
I have
are
one more.
going.
I have
One
one more
more.
thing.
Okay.
So I was thinking about this for those in the early stages. Certainly an option is to hire a consultant to build it for you. But I was thinking that there is another approach, and it's to have a consultant build it with you. We have a capability. We call it a playbook accelerator, where we do some work, but you're doing the bulk of the work. We're guiding you, we're coaching you along the way. So it's a little bit of a hybrid,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on the lower end of that scale.
That's a really interesting option. So I'm glad that you raised that. We also have a question from Lisa. What is a realistic timeline to build out the process? Like, how long does it take?
Again, it depends on the stage that you're at, Lisa. If you're in the early stages, or if you're selling to, if you're in that startup phase, it could take a matter of weeks. But it could take 4 to 6 weeks. In the largest of organizations, again, it depends on the data. It depends on how many stakeholders are going to participate, because you're not just going to in the bigger organizations, you're not just going to have a RevOps person doing it on their own. They're going to likely need some input from managers, from individual contributors, perhaps from the enablement team, perhaps from marketing, customer success. You're going to need to involve lots, and meetings will slow you down. Feedback will slow you down, but you want to incorporate all that. So, it depends. A couple weeks to 6 weeks is a typical window that we see.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Well, John, we very much appreciate having you here today. You've shared some great information. You've given us all a lot to think about. So thank you for joining us. I also want to thank all of you, our audience, for spending time with us today. We never take your time for granted, but both Winning by Design and Qwilr are committed to your sales success. So if we can help you in any way, just give us some information in the survey as you exit this webinar. But otherwise, this concludes our time today. We thank you very much, and please be watching your email for an invite to the next one. All right, thank you, everyone.